Hi, John Blanchard, Muster America, joined by Eric Baylor. Welcome, Eric.
Always a pleasure to be here.
The trip to Washington you just had with Operation Firing for Effect, Veterans for Veterans Connection. Why don't you talk about that and how this all came about and why we went to Washington?
Well, this was all in reference to a mandatory funding initiative that was started a year or so ago, and we actually had it on the ballot here. We talked about it on a former show. We had it on the ballot here. 95% pass in Cook County. We talked about that on the show. Now we were taking it on nationally and went to Congress with Gene Symes and his group. There was about 30 or 40 of us united from all over the country. A lot of states represented there, New Mexico, California, Ohio, New York, of course Illinois. Illinois had a whole bus load that went out from the CVO group. And it was a great gathering. We gathered on the steps early in the morning of the Capitol, did some pictures, started getting fired up a little bit, talked about what we were going to talk about when we got in there. Then we proceeded over to the Cannon House, which is one of the congressional buildings. We went to the actual chamber for the Veterans Committee. Got a chance to take a look around in there and see all the nice military artifacts that are hanging up in and around there. It was a very prestigious. You know, you're taken back when you go in there and you see what's hanging in there. I almost describe it as the same that you had when you went to see Tammy Duckworth into her office and all of her stuff. And we had quite a few congressmen that actually came, or their representatives came, and we had a chance to sit down and fire off questions at them. They responded very well, were very well backed, and a couple of them gave us some ideas about how we can take this further and really, get the word out there more about this. And it was just a great trip overall.
Well, getting this mandatory funding passed on a federal level, because it is federal, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs funding. But getting that passed on a federal level, we're getting that done in states to support it, but to get it done on a federal level would be all of the Congress and all of the Senate.
Everybody. It takes a lot of representatives. It's just not one representative can just push something through. And we see that with bills all the time. And it takes backing of them, and you need to write. You need to write to your congressman and your Senate. They want to see letters. They want to know how many people are backing them, and then they can take that idea and they can push it forward.
Well, not just on a federal level, but even locally in our own state. To have a bill presented, you've got a bill that you followed for a while.
Sure. House Bill 1234. It was brought about by Representative Waite. He introduced it to the House, and it was
passed unanimously.
Unanimously, 116 to 0. 3 readings. It was passed on the same day of the 3rd reading, so they voted on it immediately after the 3rd reading. It was passed on to the Senate, opened up in the Senate, went through the 1st reading, passed on to the Rules Committee, and this was a year ago, and that's the last thing you've heard of this.
So Rules Committee, or any committee, is basically like I think Mr. Franks called it a purgatory.
Yeah, that's where they stop things. They
know
what they're doing.
What was that bill for?
Oh, the bill was for changing the set-aside businesses for the state, or the set-aside contracts for the state for veteran-owned businesses from, it's presently at 3%, and we wanted to have it raised to 12%.
So 12% of the state's money going out to contracts would have to go to veteran-owned businesses.
Exactly.
Well, that's real interesting, because most of the veterans have an entrepreneurial sense about them anyway. And with over 300,000 of our military coming back, not all from Illinois, but certainly a lot of them, 300,000 of them coming back. I mean, a lot of the legislators say, senators and congressmen and people that don't want us in Iraq, bring them back today. If we did, we'd have 300,000 of them running around.
Exactly.
And if they were starting businesses, a 12% set aside would certainly help them to get the business.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to get that business anyway. Why not?
Somebody that served their country, somebody that deserves a break, you know, for doing their duty and putting their life on the line.
So 300,000 of them coming back. Let's leave the job side of this out, the contracting with the states, because there's a lot of states that do have a set aside. California's got a 3%, Georgia's got a percent, but Illinois should have 12%. Should have had that. But still, 300,000 of them coming back. Now, I was on military.com, and for an E3 at 2 years, his pay is equivalent to $7.20.
Right.
$7.20 an hour. In some places, that's not even minimum wage. So for 2 years, that's what he's made. Now, when he comes back to get a place to live, get a car, get civilian clothes, 300,000 of them, and most of them have gone in, are probably E1, E2, and E3
Exactly.
in their first 2 years. So let's hurry up and bring them back. Let's bring back 300,000 of them when we don't have mandatory funding for the VA, and we don't have enough jobs now, and we can't have veterans getting a higher percentage of set-aside in the state. What's wrong with this picture?
It's you know, Gene Symes brought up the same thing during the Washington trip. There was a war protest that was supposed to be going on at the same time, and he was going to approach the backers of the war protest and say, look, if we did what you want to do, which was bring everybody back right now, how could we possibly take care of all 300,000 at one time in the VA system without mandatory funding?
Now, I've said it in many interviews. In this decade, we will have the highest number of veteran population ever in history. Most of them disabled with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. How are we going to take care of them when they come back? Well, our state legislators and our federal legislators certainly need to be able to get bills passed. And speaking with Jack Franks, you know, it's absurd. I guess there's three things that you really don't want to know: how to make sausage, how laws are passed, and I won't even go into the third one. But it's absurd. A wonderful bill, 12% set aside for veteran-owned businesses. We owe them. We owe us. We owe us.
Exactly.
But we can't get any kind of special.
One senator was able to stop that. Whoever is in charge of the Rules Committee is the man that did it, or the woman that did it.
Well, we talked with Representative Franks about that, but he's got this very same taste in his mouth. He presented the bill for the recall of elected officials in Illinois, and it passed through the House. He had his sponsor in the Senate that was going to take it and spearhead this and go forward. I can't remember the senator's name that took it, the Illinois state senator's name that took it as a sponsor. He was a big opposer of it and quashed the whole thing in a most unethical manner, according to the reports.
Right.
So Jack Franks understands this, and he understands veterans and the need for them as well. Let's take a look at Jack Franks.
Okay.
Hi, John Blanchard from Muster America. Joining me today, joining Representative Jack Franks in his office in Marengo. Representative, thank you for your time and your work with the veterans.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
The state legislative process is certainly something to be marveled at the least.
That's one way of saying it.
But I've got here quite a stack of some of the veterans bills that you've either authored or co-sponsored or worked on in some way. A lot of the bills are good. You do a remarkable job of keeping veterans in mind. But some of these bills get so far and get off to committee or just die somehow.
Right.
With the great work of Representative Tryon, Senator Altoff, and yourself, they still die.